you adored Fire Emblem Three Houses as much as I did, you're probably so excited for Fire Emblem Engage releasing later this week. And if you are, we need to talk, because there are some quite big differences between Fire Emblem Engage and Fire Emblem Three Houses that you need to know about before you spend your money on this game. So today we're going to cover everything you need to know before you buy Fire Emblem Engage. Now, a lot of this information has come to light just today as Nintendo released an article called Ask the Developer, where they really highlighted the difference between Fire Emblem Three Houses and Fire Emblem Engage. If you don't know, Fire Emblem Engage is releasing this Friday. And the great thing about Fire Emblem games, especially this one, is that it's very beginner friendly, as the story has no connection to any of the previous Fire Emblem games. The story takes place in the world of Elios, which is made up of 4 realms surrounding a holy land at its center, where you see the main character of the game, Eeowna, wake from a 1,000-year sleep. 1,000 years ago, Eeowna fought in a war between the Divine Dragon and the Fell Dragon to save the world. And thanks to the effort of Eeowna and the other Emblem warriors, they managed to defeat and imprison the Fell Dragon. And 1,000 years later, Eeowna wakes up to find the Fell Dragon is reawakening. The story sees you go on an adventure to find all 12 Emblem rings, with the power to prevent the revival of the Fell Dragon and save the world. Much like Fire Emblem Three Houses, there are multiple paths that you can go down, and this story will see you contend with 4 different royal families. From the looks of it, the story is going to be utterly fantastic. And I really like what the developers said about the main protagonist being a much more vulnerable hero than what we're used to. And if you didn't know, this game is made so that you can either play as a man or a woman, with voice acting to go alongside each. So it looks as though this story may center a little bit more around the main character rather than the characters that surround them. And I'm really excited for that. For me, one of the big things that made Fire Emblem Three Houses incredible was the story and the cutscenes. Every single battle you did felt rewarding, as you knew there was going to be a snippet of incredible story waiting for you on the other side. And thankfully, this also looks to be true with Fire Emblem Engage, with the developers stressing that the story will have lots of twists and turns in it. Now, the next part will either be good news or bad news, depending on the reasons why you fell in love with Fire Emblem Three Houses. Fire Emblem Engage is a lot more battle focused, and I don't know how to feel about that, honestly. The developers talked about really streamlining a lot of the social sim-like elements that we were used to in Three Houses. Instead of splitting your time between the social side in the hub and the battles, the game developers talked about trying their best to get you straight into the battles as fast as possible. That's not to say there's nothing to do in between battles, because there definitely is. In between battles, it looks like you can do the normal things, like interacting with characters, upgrading weapons, training, cooking, and even tending to animals. I am very happy with the addition of animals, especially this guy. But it definitely looks as though you're not going to gain as much information talking to characters outside of the battles than we did in Three Houses. And I kind of feel mixed about this. As someone who wanted to befriend everyone in Three Houses, I often felt overwhelmed by the amount you could do inside the school. And a part of me thinks it's a good thing that the game's trying to get you to go straight back into battle. But on the flip side, I loved how much information you could gain from each and every character. One of my favorite things in Three Houses was figuring out which characters had a crush on the other characters. It just made everyone feel more alive, that other than interacting with you, these characters also had relationships and friendships with each other. That's not to say there aren't friendships between characters, because there definitely is, but this comes about in a slightly different way. For example, if you have 2 characters who help each other out in battle, then after a while, their friendship will increase enough that you get to see things like support conversations. Not only will this let you learn more about each of the characters, but also their relationship with each other. And this also makes them better at helping each other in battle in the future. So from the looks of it, it looks as though you're relying on the cutscenes and the in-battle mechanics a lot more to learn about each character, rather than interacting with them outside of the battles. It depends how they do this as to whether I'll like it more than Three Houses. Dunno, relationships were a great part of it. Okay, speaking of battles, let's get into that. Fire Emblem has always been great at introducing new players to the game. So do not worry if this is your first tactical RPG type game. Three Houses was actually my first one, and I found it really enjoyable and actually did alright. So for those of you who don't know, tactical RPGs are somewhat different to normal turn-based games because not only are you in charge of when you attack and what attack you use, you're also in charge of moving each and every unit each turn. So battles take place on a map, and it's up to you to navigate it with your army of people to get to the goal. Different characters will have different classes, and this will not only affect how they move each turn and how far, but also how far away they can attack from. And as always, each class has its strengths and its weaknesses. From the trailer footage, this looks to be pretty similar to Fire Emblem Three Houses. We know there's a few differences in the attack style, but one thing I love about the article that I read is how the devs stressed that they wanted to make sure this game was suitable for those who aren't normally good at tactical games. So I think they spent a lot of time really perfecting the difficulty level and little things you can use in case things go wrong. There are also game difficulty settings. There's casual and classical. In the casual game setting, there is no permadeath, meaning that you can play stress-free and not worry about losing your favorite character. But if you're into playing the classical mode, there are a few things that will give you a hand, so it's not quite as brutal as permadeath sounds. For example, there is a time rewind feature that you can use. I believe you can use this as many times as you want. So even if you mess up, you can actually go back a few turns and rewrite your mistake. And if you're worried about the game tutorial feeling really long or gruelish, don't worry about that either. The devs thought about that too. They've made a point in this game to make sure you can use all the new features as early as possible to suck you in. And the main new feature in this game is called the Engage feature. Each of the 12 rings you collect from around the land has a spirit of a powerful warrior inside. And if you're not familiar with Fire Emblem games, I think most of these, if not all of these, are from previous games. I definitely recognize Marth. Equipping these rings to characters gives that person the power of the warrior spirit. This introduces a mechanic like charging the rings up, letting them merge with the spirit to use special moves that can turn the tide on a tricky battle. And this honestly looks like a great twist on the classic Fire Emblem battling system. I think for those of us who enjoyed the social side of Fire Emblem Three Houses, whether we enjoy Engage or not is fully dependent on how good the story is. I adored learning so much about the characters, and all I hope is that they try and give us that same feeling, just in different ways. Although I must admit, if we can't marry anyone, I will be kind of sad. Although it was a small part of Fire Emblem Three Houses, deciding who to marry is an integral part of my personality, okay? That's kind of the basics of the game covered. Let's get into whether you should buy the expansion pass or not. Now, although I can't personally tell you whether it's worth spending your money on, I can tell you everything we know so far about it. It's coming in 4 waves, and other than the 4th wave, it doesn't really look like we're getting much in the way of gameplay. Wave 1 comes to us on the 20th of January, and it gives us the emblem characters Edelgard, my queen. I'm buying this just for her, and Dimitri and Claude. It also brings you the Fire Emblem character Tiki, in addition to some in-game support items, accessories, and a silver card. Wave 2 will have more support items and accessories, and Wave 3 literally just says accessories at this point. When things get interesting though is Wave 4. Now, we have no idea when this is coming, but they did list on the website that it's got new story scenarios, new characters, locations, and maps, and also new class types. So I think that's where the main meat of the DLC comes from. My main worry about having the main meat of the DLC in Wave 4 is that by the time it comes out, we might all be done with the game. There's a lot of big games coming out in 2023, and I'm glad this game is so early as we're in a little bit of a quiet period. But if it comes out after Breath of the Wild 2 or even around Fae Farm, it's screwed. I'm never picking this game back up again after that. Another thing to bear in mind is that you don't have to decide on buying the expansion pass right now. As I said, Wave 1 only really has cosmetic stuff, so you're not missing out on that much. So you can definitely hold off to see if Wave 4 is even worth it, or if you're still even playing the game when we get there. I will be streaming Fire Emblem Engage day 1 on this YouTube channel, so make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. But I have mixed feelings. Let me know how you feel in the comments down below, and I'll see you next time. Bye!